folks. I'm Aubrey Shick, a Senior Digital Health Advisor at the Center for Devices and Radiological Health, the Digital Health Center of Excellence at the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. So this is a conference on existing law and extended reality. And so I'm going to be providing a lightning intro to what we do here at the Digital Health Center of Excellence, our medical extended reality efforts, a digital health policy, and a new interactive policy tool I hope you find useful. Hopefully these are updating. So the Digital Health Center of Excellence empowers stakeholders to advance public health by fostering responsible and high quality digital health innovation. So we connect and build partnerships, share knowledge, and we innovate regulatory approaches to provide efficient and least burdensome oversight while meeting the FDA standards for safety and effective products. We have a particularly interdisciplinary team that brings a lot of diversity and experience from outside of the FDA to complement the deep experience within FDA. And we provide a wide range of services. Externally to the FDA, we provide clarity on regulation, advance international harmonization on device regulatory policy and standards. We facilitate and build strategic partnerships, and we communicate FDA's research interests. Within FDA, we provide digital health expertise. We consult to reviewing groups, we offer training opportunities, and we foster coordination, collaboration across the FDA on topics of digital health. Just a reminder, our group is not responsible for making marketing submission decisions. These decisions still reside within the review groups. And I also want to recognize that since we are within the Center for Devices and Radiological Health, the focus of our group is on medical device regulation. And part of that is fostering a digital health focused collaboration interactions that advance public health. And this includes collaboration between FDA and academic institutions, collaborative communities, public-private partnerships, our network of digital health experts, and also the digital health inbox, where anyone can request help navigating the FDA's current policies on digital health products and receive informal feedback. Our inbox received more than 700 inquiries in fiscal year 2022, and we responded on average within just 7 days. So please do reach out to our inbox and share your questions. There's also a slide at the end with more information on engaging the Digital Health Center of Excellence. And so the Digital Health Center of Excellence covers a wide range of areas, as you can see here, and many of these have been discussed today, but let's focus on virtual and augmented reality. So the FDA has reviewed and authorized many medical devices, as Dr. Spiegel's presentation just showed us, that incorporate augmented reality and virtual reality. In December, we published a list of these authorizations. The list is not exhaustive and it's updated on a periodic basis, but the interesting thing for this audience is that it links directly to submission information for more context on the specific reviews. So some of these things are related to surgery, to orthopedics, cardiology, but interesting among these groups are authorizations and digital health solutions such as Luminopia for children with amblyopia or lazy eye, and then EaseVRX for chronic pain, which again, the previous presentation covered pretty well. So I want to take a moment, and again, Dr. Spiegel did mention this, but to highlight the medical extended reality program at FDA and its role of filling knowledge gaps by addressing open research questions related to the design, development, and the evaluation of novel MXR devices and related applications. So the outcome of this program actually provides a scientific foundation in support of regulatory requirements and decisions on innovative MXR devices. So major regulatory science gaps and challenges that drive the medical extended reality program are things like the lack of characterization and evaluation methods for different important medical applications, such as interventional procedures and surgery or rehabilitation, things like consumer grade sensors, and the fact that those have not been validated for clinical context. There's few or no assessment tools for usability of the device, such as cognitive load, which folks have mentioned here, and that affects the device safety and effectiveness. We also recently held a patient engagement advisory committee meeting to address specific considerations in augmented reality and virtual reality. So some takeaway messages from members of the peak committee meeting included members encouraged FDA to support industry in working with developers to understand how to design safe and effective devices, discussing informed consent and understanding the totality of benefits and risk, communicating expertise with devices, and also communicating surgeons' control over that environment. Peak members stress that the physician and user training needs to be adequate for the intended users, talked about transparency, the levels of risk and complexity for the particular features. They spoke to considerations regarding equity, and that being particularly important for pediatric patients and for vulnerable populations. There was also support from PEAK for clear, concise labeling and directions, especially for patients who may have limited connectivity or limited digital literacy. And so now for digital health policy. So what is a medical device? A device is defined in the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act as various types of products which are intended for use in the diagnosis of disease or other conditions, or in the cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease, or intended to affect the structure of any function of the body. So a software function can be a device regulated by the FDA, and we call these device software functions, and they can be deployed on general purpose computing platforms like mobile platforms, or on hardware devices such as AR or VR headsets. So the takeaway is that software can be a regulated medical device. And the FDA's regulatory approach to software is functionality focused, and FDA applies a risk-based framework. So low-risk products that don't meet the definition of device are not subject to the device regulatory requirements under the current laws administered by the FDA. So software functions whose functionality could pose a risk to a patient's safety if the device were not to function as intended continue to be the focus of FDA's oversight. Depending on the classification and associated regulation for the device software function, manufacturers are required to follow associated controls established by that regulation. Between not a device and devices that are the focus of FDA's oversight lies a range of software functions for which the FDA intends to exercise enforcement discretion. So that means regardless of whether or not the software function is the device, the FDA does not intend to enforce requirements under the FD&C Act. So this can include device requirements such as general and special controls, as well as registration and listing. And now for another layer. So in 2016, the device definition was amended with the 21st Century Cures Act so that some software functions are not considered to be devices, including certain software intended for administrative support of a healthcare facility, maintaining or encouraging a healthy lifestyle when there's no reference to a disease or condition, certain software functions that serves electronic patient records, for transferring, storing, converting formats, or displaying data and results, and certain clinical decision support functions. And we've published a number of guidances and resources to help clarify these policies to stakeholders. And so these are just some of the many guidances available on the website. But we also recognize that digital health is a very interdisciplinary space with folks from industry, academia, and otherwise unfamiliar with FDA's regulatory oversight. And we do understand how challenging navigating digital health policy can be. And so we created the Digital Health Policy Navigator. For anyone in this room who might be interested in seeing the Digital Health Policy Navigator, just go to your favorite place of search and type in FDA and Navigator, and it should come up. bonus points, you could do Policy Navigator and it will come up. And this is a public facing tool to help in determining whether a product's software functions are potentially the focus of the FDA's oversight. So it includes seven steps, each with a set of yes or no questions intended to guide you through relevant device regulatory considerations. So these steps lead to 4 different outcomes, which reflect the policies described in the guidances. And they include likely not a medical device. So this means a software function likely does not require FDA clearance before going to market. Likely FDA intends to exercise enforcement discretion. In this case, review the guidances, make sure the software function falls within the policy. If it does, you likely can market the product without engaging the FDA, or likely the focus of FDA's regulatory oversight. In this case, the software function is likely a device is the focus of FDA's oversight, which may involve a pre-market submission prior to marketing your product. So while the navigator does provide considerations for whether a particular software function is potentially subject to or the focus of FDA's regulatory oversight as a device, it does not address considerations on how to design, develop, or test software functions, or considerations related to the regulation of software used with other medical products like drugs and biologics, or software intended for other purposes like electronic consent forms. Although if these are topics of interest to you, there is a Navigator resources page. So throughout the Navigator, it links you to these resources page. Whatever outcome you arrive at in the Policy Navigator does not replace formal interaction with the FDA, such as a 513 request for information or feedback as part of a pre-submission. And I do want to emphasize again that we're talking about each function of a product individually within the Navigator. So reaching a likely not a medical device outcome for one function of the product, if it is multiple functions, that does not necessarily mean that the whole product is not a device and not subject to FDA's oversight. So it's important to go through the Navigator for all of the functions of your product, but please do, and please let us know what you think. So as I mentioned earlier, here is some information on engaging with the Digital Health Center of Excellence. There are a lot of different ways to get involved. And thank you for your time, and please feel free to reach out with any questions or feedback. And that digitalhealth@fda.hhs.gov is our inbox if you have any specific digital health policy questions.
Thanks. I have no idea if you can see people, so I'm sorry if I'm a disemboweled voice. I'm just curious, and I apologize that we didn't get to ask questions of the last lightning round, so if some of this is kind of bleeding over. But it's just interesting to see where there's research done on intentional interventions with the use of extended reality, i.e. in trying to address pain or, use the technology to affect an intentional outcome. And I'm curious if there seem to be standards forming on the necessity of communicating then what's learned about the potential risk or misuse on the other side of that. So for instance, if you find that you are capable of producing reduced pain or some other outcome in a patient because there are, is it biomarkers or a mental distraction or whatever it is, are there certain things in particular that the FDA or others in the medical community are interested in ensuring is it a separate category or a category that raises to a higher level of attention as we're learning more about the impact, biological or otherwise, of this technology's use?
That's an interesting question. I think what I'm hearing is, is this being considered differently? Is medical extended reality and what may be learned from digital biomarkers being considered differently than other devices or other device software functions? I also heard you ask about standards, so I might have missed that part of the question. It is a very new space overall in terms of how it's regulated. We really look at anything, be it software, AR, VR, otherwise, in terms of whether it meets the legal definition of a medical device. We really look at all of those things the same way. So whether it's a mobile app or a surgical robot. It's really all about, is this meeting the definition of a medical device? And it's looked at with the same level of intensity and review. Of course, proportionate to the patient risk. So the level of oversight is proportionate to the risk. Now, in terms of standards, when it comes to transparency, I know that there are standards that are taking shape, and the FDA does go through a process of providing feedback and adopting standards. I'm not sure, did that answer your question?
I think so.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
One question for her at the Q&A if she's willing to answer.
Sure, if it can be very fast because we're over time.
She can answer it virtually.
Oh, great. Aubrey, can we send you one question from the virtual Q&A, but we won't present it to the audience because we've run out of time?
Sure, sounds good.
All right, so we'll send it to you offline. Thank you very much.